Cut across to the Finance Minister speaking.
Mentioned it during the budget speech. It is essentially to come from the listing of the LIC and also from the IDBI at this stage.
Sale of stakes, are you saying?
Yes.
No, but that will not take.
Yeah.
And
So that listing will decide the valuations. We will work on this.
Next
and
question
it's
from
essentially these two.
53. Yes, 53.
Sir, this is Mukesh Kaushik from Dainik Bhaskar. Ma'am, I want to have clarity on defense budget, how much this time has been allocated and what is the percentage increase, what is the capital budget for this, and what is the amount allocated to Indian Air Force, Army and Navy specifically?
I think all these details will be provided in the documents. So if there is any clarification on that, you can. Otherwise, PIB press release is providing all the details and data about the different heads. We can take next question number from 8.
Ma'am, this is Ruchi Bhatia from ETNow. Congratulations on the budget. I want to ask you about the massive 2.1 lakh crore target that has been set out in the budget for disinvestment proceeds. Many say this is a very stiff target. How will the Department A look to achieve this target? Because we've seen a massive shortfall in this year. So A, on the target, and you've also spoken about a tax charter that the tax department will bring in. What will the tax charter really entail? Just to understand that.
I'm glad you asked that question. I was a bit worried that on a measure like a tax charter, and in spite of me mentioning it in 2 different places in my speech, not a person has asked me any question. I'm so glad you asked. That's a very major step. Other than us going around the country to tell tax administrators to ensure that face-to-face engagement with the taxpayers need not necessarily be there, to ensure that they are dealing with them more like wealth creators, and to make sure that they would approach them only to gather information. In spite of all this, you would still hear some comments occasionally about, no, there is a level of harassment and so on. And our commitment to make sure that taxpayers are respected, and we quite honor them for the commitment in nation building that they're showing by being honest taxpayers, had to be given an expression of sorts. And therefore we came up, and I must thank, he's not here, the principal advisor, Sanjeev Sanyal did a lot of work for me on this. He researched and gave me a lot of inputs. If I'm right, there are only 3 countries in this world which have enshrined the rights of a taxpayer in their laws. Canada, USA, and Australia, if I remember correct. So when he, after quite a lot of inputs, came up with the taxpayer rights and a charter as a result, we, as usual in the ministry, discussed it in my morning meeting with the secretaries, and then we worked on it. That is to prove very clearly that the government's intent is not to harass anybody. If there are 1 or 2 black sheep here and there, they are there everywhere, not just among tax administrators. But the intent of the government had to be cleared. And therefore we thought we'll enshrine it in the statute itself, because we believe in it. It's an article of faith for us to respect wealth creators. It's an article of faith for us to make sure that the honest taxpayer is not suspect. And therefore we have made it a point to bring it into the Act itself as a charter, the details of which will come out. So that was one of your questions. What was the other? Tuhin Pandey is here. Only to have one word in his favor before he speaks is, I set the target in July. And I also will have to tell you, didn't you know about it, will be your question next. But I'll also have to tell you, between July and now, January. The immense effort that Atanu, before Tuhin as Disinvestment Secretary and now Tuhin, are all undertaking. You will see successful disinvestment happening within the next few months. But your accounts for this year end 31st March. Can I keep speculating? So obviously I agree. Between July and now, a lot of legwork has been completed. And the benefits are going to go into the next financial year. So you may hold me for having set a target which I didn't fulfill, but within 6 months I can stand up and tell you, we have done enough groundwork. Tuhin Pandey can speak now about the rest.
As you said, we have actually lined up several transactions.
So I think 20th of November, government took decisions of some big ticket disinvestments. One is the BPCL, another is Concord, another is Shipping Corporation of India, and THTC and NIPCO. Some of them we are going to conclude this year, but some of the large ones are going to spill over to the next year, and the revenues, receipts are going to come in the next year. So the transactions are all lined up. As you know, the Air India expression of interest is already out, and very soon BPCL expression of interest it is just about ready. It will be out as well, and so on and so forth. So therefore we are quite hopeful that we would be achieving the disinvestment target next year. And also for this year, whatever is there. As you know, we are a very successful ETF. Last 2 days we raised 21,000 crore on the ETF, of which we are retaining 16,500 crore.
40.
Sir, ma'am, this is Karunjit from ET. This is a question for the Revenue Secretary. Sir, there's a provision in the finance bill that Indians who are not paying taxes abroad, will have to pay taxes in India. How will this work? Does this mean people working in Dubai and places like that which have zero taxation will have to pay taxes on their global income in India?
We have made changes in the finance, we have proposed changes in the Income Tax Act, where if an Indian citizen, if he stays out of country for more than 182 days, he becomes non-resident. So we have made some changes there. So now in order to become non-resident, he has to stay out of the country for 240 days. That is one. And secondly, we have also provided that in many cases we have found that some people are resident of no country in the world. They may be staying a certain number of days in different parts of the country. So what we have said is that if any Indian citizen, if he is not a resident of any country in the world, then he will be deemed to be resident in India, and then his worldwide income will be taxed.
Number 12.
Hi ma'am, congratulations on an amazing budget speech. This is Meghna Mittal from Newsrise. I wanted to ask you regarding the fiscal deficit relaxation that we have announced for the current year, 3.8 and 3.5 for the next year. I wanted to understand, will it be possible from 3.8 to directly achieve the 3.5% fiscal deficit target? And secondly, I wanted to understand from the LIC IPO, what would be the likely quantum that we could look at and the time frame?
On the LIC time frame and also the IPO details, I'll have Secretary talk about it. But on the fiscal deficit, we had announced during the BE July 3.3. But subsequent to that, because of the challenges that we faced towards wanting to put more money in the hands of people, to improve on consumption demand, to improve on investments which have to be from the public happening, because the private investment was happening but not at the pace in which it would have helped the whole process, but the public expenditure had to be kept up. And equally, because of various reasons, some natural disaster related, some because of the compliance difficulties in the process, some others unexplained, GST collection coming down. So on the one hand, your revenue generation could not be pressed further. On the other, there was a very clear demand on public spending. So when it was so obvious that I had to go spending, and you know the various attempts we made to release money from the government expenditure be carried out, and make sure that no pending amounts are lying anywhere, and so on. So with both opposite sides being so strongly laid out, it was only obvious that without violating the FRBM, I had to seek that escape clause. And therefore 0.5% forbearance was something which I had to invoke. And therefore 3.8 this year. And the question that you're asking about, why is it 3.5 next year, are you sure you'll be able to come down to that level, is because if you were to look at the way in which revenue generation is improving now, in the last 3 months itself, the GST collection has crossed 1 lakh crore. And I guess the coming months, and also equally with it, the reduction because of corporate rate cut, corporate tax which was reduced, and therefore the income foregone there, both accentuated the problem in terms of revenue generation. I hope the corporate rate tax, the tax cut, and the benefit derived by new companies will all come to play in the coming months. I guess, therefore, there will be an improvement in collection. So improvement in GST collection, as we are seeing it now, and even better in the future months. Improvement because of the corporate tax cut and the incentive which is coming because of that. I guess revenue generation improvement will give me that little comfort so that I can come down from 3.8 to 3.5 next year itself, with the disinvestment also showing clear signs of improvement.
27.
These details will be worked out. This is a process which is going to take time in terms of the offer which will it make and thereafter listing. So we'll detail these timelines to you. But this is all to happen in the next year.
मैम आलोक फ्रॉम CNBC आवाज़, इधर से मैम, जो आप लोगों ने डायरेक्ट टैक्स के लिए विवाद से विश्वास स्कीम लॉन्च करने की बात कही है, उसको लेकर क्या टारगेट है, कितना उसमें कलेक्शन हो पाएगा, और उसके डिटेल्स क्या हैं कि 31 मार्च तक आप लोगों ने कहा कि कोई उसमें एडिशनल चार्जेस नहीं लगेंगे, 31 जून तक चार्जेस लगेंगे, वो क्या डिटेल्स होंगे, कितने चार्जेस लगेंगे, अगर इसके बारे में जानकारी देते, और कितना इससे अमाउंट कलेक्ट हो सकेगा, रेवेन्यू कितना सपोर्ट मिल पाएगा?
रेवेन्यू सेक्रेटरी इसका डिटेल्स देंगे, फिर भी इसके पीछे हमारी नियत ये था कि इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स में भी सबका विश्वास के द्वारा हमने पेंडिंग लिटिगेशन को सॉल्व की, और उसका रिस्पॉन्स आपने देखा, that most of them decided to join in the scheme and close the cases which have been pending. On the very same principle अभी डायरेक्ट टैक्स में भी कर रहे हैं. 31 के अंदर ही करो तो सिर्फ डिस्प्यूटेड टैक्स अमाउंट पे करो, कुछ पेनल्टी नहीं है, कुछ टैक्स भी, इंटरेस्ट भी आप पे करने का आवश्यकता नहीं होगा. अगर 31 मार्च को क्रॉस कर दिया फिर भी करना चाह रहे हैं तो थोड़ा एक्स्ट्रा चार्ज पे करके यही प्रिंसिपल के आधारित आप आपके क्लोज कर सकते हैं आपके केस को जून 30 तक. यही है मूलभूत इसमें विषय. मगर रेवेन्यू सेक्रेटरी इफ यू वांट टू ऐड.
करीब 4,90,000 केसेस हैं जहां पर कि केसेस डिस्प्यूट में हैं, ITAT, हाई कोर्ट, सुप्रीम कोर्ट, कमिश्नर अपील में. सभी को ये सुविधा दी गई है कि 31 मार्च के पहले अगर इसका फ़ायदा उठाएं तो किस डिस्प्यूट में जहाँ पर कुछ टैक्स डिस्प्यूट में होता है उस पर इंटरेस्ट है, पेनल्टी है, वो सब माफ़ हो जाएगा, सिर्फ उनको टैक्स देना पड़ेगा. अगर 31 मार्च के बाद लेंगे तो उनको 10% और टैक्स देना पड़ेगा. लेकिन बहुत सारे केसेस ऐसे हैं जिसमें कि टैक्स डिस्प्यूट में नहीं है लेकिन इंटरेस्ट और पेनल्टी का सवाल होता है. उस केस में भी हमने कहा है कि जिसमें सिर्फ इंटरेस्ट और पेनल्टी आ रहा है उसमें सिर्फ वो 25% भर दे अगर 31 मार्च के पहले, तो उसका पूरा केस खत्म हो सकता है। अगर वो 31 मार्च के बाद करता है तो 25% के बदले में 30% देना पड़ेगा।
113.
I'm Nikun Johri from Bloomberg Quint. Vishwas scheme, I'd like to ask you a question on that. This has been designed to the previous scheme for indirect taxes. Although the collections from that scheme were better, there were only small taxpayers who actually availed the scheme. So how would this scheme be attractive for even large taxpayers who generally owe larger tax dues to the government? And also, ma'am, there's not been any allocation for recapitalization sector banks this year. And most of the mergers that were announced last year would take place now. So what happens, what's your recapitalization plan for the next year?
I'll answer that second bit first and then ask the Revenue Secretary to talk on the Vivad Se Vishwas. I have very clearly said about the mergers. I'll ask also the Secretary Banking to speak about it. I have spoken in detail about the recapitalization of the bank and about the bringing 10 banks to 4 and the process of amalgamation. And later also I've spoken about the way in which banks can benefit from certain tax deductions, rates, concessions and so on. All in this context of banks having been amalgamated. I have not said I won't give any money for recapitalization. Just as you're saying you've not given any numbers for recapitalization, I've also not said no, I will not give. Which means as and when there is a need, we'll certainly consider that.
As Madam said that this will be assessed during the year, but at the same time, out of the merger, if we look at the Bank of Baroda, already there are signs of huge expenditure, rationalization and efficiency gains out there. The synergy which has been identified for annual saving is close to 1900 crores. And the realizable target for this year itself is around 500 crores. So these are the kind of efficiency gains which are coming, and therefore these banks will also go through this process in terms of whole lot of expenditure optimization and efficiencies. You have seen the SBI results yesterday. I mean, this is a record operating profit which you have seen. So all these banks, having done all the NPAs reduction, PCR coverage at high time, recoveries, are in a position that they can also go to the market to take care of their own capital needs.
25.
Only involves the rights of the taxpayer, but also the obligations of a taxpayer. So what has the government decided as far as the obligation is concerned? Because compliance to taxes is a problem, and Mr. Pandey, others have been working at it. The second question is although you have said that a list will be given later about what exemptions to taxes are still there, but I wanted to know a lot of tax was saved by people by making donations to charitable trusts. For example, tomorrow there is a mandir and people want to donate to that. What will happen? Will that exemption continue?
In the new system, any donation made to a charitable trust will not be allowed as a deduction. However, if someone wants to make deductions to the charitable trust and claim exemption, he can be in the old regime, number one. So far as the charitable institution is concerned, they will continue to enjoy the exemptions as permissible under the Income Tax Act. You see, the obligation of the taxpayer has already been specified in the concerned tax laws. If it is an Income Tax Act, Income Tax Act provides that by such and such date the returns have to be filed, then so much tax has to be paid. So those obligations are already there so far as the taxpayers are concerned. What we have done now is that we have, through this charter, we are going to provide that what obligations the tax administration will have towards the taxpayer.
Number 9.
Ma'am, Ujjwal Narayan from Newsrise. This side. Ujjwal Narayan from Newsrise. My question is about food subsidy. Looking at the budget documents, we see a huge cut in food subsidy. It was earlier in B, it was 1,84,000 crores, which has been now reduced to 1,08,688 crores. So, in the next financial year, BE also, it is 1,15,000 crore. So, what is the new arrangement from where this spending, food subsidy spending had been reduced, or from any other heads you are utilizing the funds or diverting? My another question is about PM-Kisan, because in BE, you have put an estimate of 75,000 crore, which has been reduced to 54,000 crore. So, what is the reason behind unutilization of the stated estimate, the estimates in this head, sir?
Regarding the food subsidy, the balance between what you find in the budget estimate and what has been estimated as a liability, you will find in a separate statement which the minister referred to in her speech. He said we have annexed a statement on other resources that are being used to fund costs, and that you would find in Annexure 5 to the budget speech. So this is being provided as credit to the Food Corporation of India from the National Small Savings Fund. The principal as well as the interest will be serviced by the Government of India. So the funds are provided, they are provided for separately. You will find it in Annexure 5. And as regards PM-Kisan, the scheme was announced with an expected number of farmers. In actual practice, in the rollout of the scheme, this year being the first year of the scheme, the estimation was done on a particular basis. The actual number has worked out to be a little less. Therefore, the revised estimates reflect what is expected to be incurred this year, but next year's provisions are fully provided for the larger number. That is expected, yes.
Number 10.
Priscilla from The Hindu, ma'am. Looking at given that this is a time of distress in the rural economy and especially a consumer demand slowdown in the rural economy, what is the rationale behind reducing your allocation for rural development? And especially when you look at the Narega scheme, which has had a lot of demand this year, your budget estimate, your allocation is only 61,500 in comparison to 71,000, which was last year's revised. You've actually cut it by 9,500. What's the rationale behind that? And my other question is about LIC. Would the LIC listing require an amendment to insurance laws?
You mentioned about MNRGA. See, that is a demand-driven scheme. This year we went up because there was a demand for this in certain areas, and the full money was provided. Again, next year, if you see, it's a usual, normal level funding that has been provided for MNRGA. If there is an additional demand from some areas which comes up, accordingly at RE stage, we'll again meet it. All these schemes, rural development has a very large chunk this year, and rural development and agriculture put together are very close to 3 lakh crores. So wherever there is a demand, especially on MNRGA, whenever additional demand comes up, they will be fully funded. It's a normal run of demands over the year which comes up. There was an additional demand from certain areas which came up, which were funded. So RE of 2019-20 reflects meeting the demands fully, not rolling them over.
We'll follow the extant procedure for listing and for other things, including the legislative changes if it requires, in consultation with the Ministry of Law. And that process we have already started.
103.
Hello. Yeah. Ma'am, congratulations for presenting a very positive budget in a very odd macroeconomic situation. You've mentioned you've targeted 10% growth of GDP, and you have also given a lot of income tax exemption this time. which is supposed to fuel the consumption demand, which is why the economy is in this position, sir. Ma'am, what the recent, if you see the Sensex right now, it has tanked by about 1,000 points. It means that the corporates are not happy with the exemptions and deductions that you've given in the budget. So what is your take on that? Do you think they were also expecting the STT and CCT also to be reduced?
Well, thank you for, first of all, seeing what we had worked for, the positive side of the budget. The observation that you have put forward about the stock market, I would wait for a full working day in the stock market. Today being Saturday, I think they have not really, well, I'm not sure if every aspect of the stock market was fully open today. So we'd wait for Monday. I would think many of what we have said in the budget would definitely have an impact, positive impact on the stock market, particularly the kind of reforms that we have put forward on the bond market is for the first time ever in this country. Such progressive, forward-looking, bold steps on strengthening and deepening the Indian bond market has come through in this budget. And I'm confident that on Monday, when the stock markets actually open, there will be definitely a clear indication of what the government has done on this. So today's response from the stock market, I would reserve my comments till Monday. Unless any of the secretaries want to say anything more.
57.
मैम आनंद हूँ इंडिया टीवी से। यहाँ सब आपको बधाई दे रहे हैं बजट के लिए, लेकिन विपक्ष को आपका बजट जो है पसंद नहीं आया है। राहुल गांधी ने कहा कि इतिहास का सबसे लंबा बजट भाषण था, लेकिन ये खोखला था और इसमें युवाओं को रोजगार कैसे मिले इसका कोई रास्ता नहीं दिखाता है ये बजट।
Okay.
मैंने सोचा इतना लंबा बजट के भाषण में युवाओं के रोजगार कहाँ से मिलेगा, कैसे मिलेगा, इसमें ही मैं ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हर एक जो नया स्कीम हम अनाउंस कर रहे हैं, हर एक नया जो कदम हम उठाना चाह रहे हैं, उन सब में युवा के लिए क्या है ये तो मैं विस्तार से बोली। और ये भी मैं मानती हूँ, मैं सेक्रेटरी से थोड़ा नाराज़गी भी जताई कि क्या इतना लंबा करवा दिया मैंने बजट को, शायद हाउस में बहुत सारे इतना लंबा बजट स्पीच मेरे से एक्सपेक्ट नहीं किए होंगे। उस बात को मैंने मानने को तैयार हूँ कि लंबा था भाषण, हाँ, मगर मैंने सोचा उसमें युवा के लिए, स्पेसिफिकली युवा के लिए कैसे हर एक ऐसे प्रोग्राम से उनको बेनिफिट होने वाले हैं, उसको मैं शुरुआत से लेकर लास्ट तक जगह जगह पर विस्तार से बोले हैं। छोड़ो इस पे।
21.
Congratulations, ma'am, for this very generous budget. You have proposed several anti-abuse...
Hey, 1 minute, thank you, but tell me who you are.
Girish from Mint, ma'am.
Sorry?
Girish from Mint.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. That's second. That's a third. That's a fourth somewhere here. Convey kariye na Rahul Gandhi ji ko.
Ma'am, you have proposed several anti-abuse measures and also steps to widen the tax base. Any estimate available on how much these might fetch in terms of revenue, ma'am?
Can you just repeat your question?
You have proposed several anti-abuse measures as well as steps to widen the tax base, like taxes on e-commerce companies, then changes in the definition of residents. So any estimate on how much these might yield in terms of revenue?
In this budget, we have taken several anti-abuse measures. One we just now mentioned about the changing the definition of non-resident and also making Indian citizen resident. Similarly, we have incorporated certain tedious provisions. For example, on the e-commerce companies, if some sales are made, then the TDS will have to be collected. Similarly, in a business having turnover more than 10 crores of rupees, and if he makes a purchase from a single party exceeding 50 lakhs, then the TDS of 0.1% will be imposed. So these are some of the measures. The details are given in the finance bill and also in the budget document here. So these are some of the measures where certain anti-abuse and also those will be addressed, and also it will help us widening the tax net.
150.
Everybody, this is Prerna from Fortune India. Ma'am, despite a very meticulously drafted budget, there was nothing in specific for the auto industry, which is the worst hit right now. GST cuts or scrappage policy or other incentives. So is that not a priority right now, or you have like other plans that you would want to roll out eventually? Thanks.
I'm not sure if in the budget our approach has been industry sector wise. So if you picked up on automobile, there may be others who will pick up on many others. My approach in the budget has not been